This is the Hasselblad X2D2, a big improvement over the original X2D, which was one of my favorite cameras that I've used in the past few years. I've also used every single one of the X series cameras from Hasselblad. So what makes this one special and different, and why do I think it's actually the camera I've been waiting for from Hasselblad all this time? So right off the bat, with disclosures, I've worked with Hasselblad in varying capacities for like over a decade. They let me borrow cameras. I've done videos obviously about the 907X, the X2D. I did videos on the original 907X, like the 50C version. And I even used that original back on my 500CM like forever ago. So I've had a working relationship with them for a while, off and on over the years, before I even had a YouTube channel. And for context, I am someone that uses Hasselblad cameras in my actual work and workflow. So it's not just something that I get as part of like a social media thing and then they just go into like a bin, or I just use them for personal stuff or something. Like, I actually do use these cameras and have really loved the ecosystem. But that being said, this camera was given to me by Hasselblad in exchange for making a video about it. So this video, I wouldn't say it's a review necessarily, because if anybody's saying that something's a review and they're getting something in compensation for it, obviously they're not going to be unbiased. But I'm going to try to do my best in featuring the things that I think are most intriguing about this, and big upgrades over the X2D as well, which is still a fantastic camera, and you can get one on the used market for really inexpensive relative to what it has been. And speaking of that, I guess we'll start there with the price. So they did a big price reduction. I think that Hasselblad often falls into that, you know, like Hasselblad and Leica category, where people just think sometimes that they're just expensive to be expensive, which if you've used one of these, you know that it's not exactly the case. And what I can say pretty definitively is the fact that they were able to lower the price on this is really fantastic and puts it much more in line with other competitor cameras like the GFX series. If you look into the pricing of the X2D2 versus like the GFX 100-2, you'll find that they're pretty comparable in price. So while that is still a lot of money, don't get me wrong, it's a lot of money to spend on a camera. I think it brings Hasselblad into a segment of the market and opens it up for availability for a lot more people that might be considering getting into this ecosystem. Now, this camera does share a ton of stuff from the original X2D that were absolutely fantastic. The viewfinder here is very large. It's not the highest resolution screen on the market or anything like that, but it is a really nice large screen. One of the criticisms I do have is, as someone that has glasses and wears glasses, I am having a bit of an issue, and I've changed the one setting I can on here, but I'm having a bit of an issue getting the little sensor here. There are a lot of times where I'll put this up to my eye and like right now it didn't switch. Now I gotta move maybe the glasses up a little bit and block the thing. But the fact that like I'm really, really close, you know, millimeters away, and it doesn't switch unless I'm like covering it like very specifically. I don't know what the deal is, and if it's reflecting off of a part of my glass, I don't know what the problem is, but it is something that's kind of thrown me off a little bit. And even in shoots, like I've brought this up to my face and it's not switched, and I don't know what the deal is. Like I did it that time, but I've had a couple issues with it lately, so hopefully it's something that they can fix in firmware, just increasing the sensitivity of that or something like that. But I will say that the display in there is very large, and it kind of like helps to make you feel kind of engrossed in the picture, like you're part of the thing a lot more than a lot of the smaller viewfinders out there. A big upgrade though is this enormous screen. The screen is massive, and as you can see, it does come out a lot further than the original X2D did. You're not having overlap of the viewfinder here onto the screen. It just pushes it out a little bit further. And this is like the best screen that I have on any camera that I've used. Even I did a shoot the other day for a client, and I was showing them the images on the back of the screen and was just going like, this just makes my work look so good. And it makes the colors pop and everything really, really well. It was one of the things that as I was getting a little bit frustrated with the EVF not showing up when I was wearing these glasses, that I started shooting a little bit more on the back LCD panel anyway, and was like, man, this is actually a really good experience. I don't normally shoot off of something like that, but it's just such a high quality screen that it made that experience great as well. Now, I will say another big upgrade over the X2D and then also over the 907X that I think pertains to the screen, even though it's not the screen's thing necessarily, although it technically is actually, is that the camera can also shoot a fully encapsulated HDR mode. So it's doing that within the HEIF or the JPEG files, just like an iPhone does. But what it's doing is allowing a lot more dynamic range, hence the HDR thing. It shows up a lot on the display as well. It's allowing me to see in a completely different workflow, and I'm able to see much more of what the actual dynamic range of the file is giving me, which also means that colors look more vibrant. The scene has more dynamic range, while still remaining contrasty. I know that I do that on other cameras where sometimes I'll flatten the images out a little bit more so that the image just looks better, but sometimes that makes it look flat and not contrasty. So the screen and the image are still having a lot of good contrast and a lot of color definition and detail, but they also retain a lot more natural looking dynamic range just on the screen itself, which even if I don't ever use those or don't go into like an HDR workflow after the fact, I'm still gonna leave that on in the camera just because the experience of seeing that as I review my images is absolutely phenomenal. And it just gives myself and my clients a lot more confidence in the work that we're making together. Now that we've talked about files a little bit, I will definitely jump into a couple things on that end as well. First of all, these are 16-bit 100 megapixel RAW files. They have the best dynamic range of any camera I've used. They have the best color fidelity of any camera I've used. It is like just being able to have a ridiculous amount of extra latitude, both in how you manipulate your colors and how you are able to recover detail in like the shadows and the highlights and things. It just makes the files so much more manageable and malleable, I guess would be the word to use. If you are moving into the system, you might find that you're gonna need to tweak your presets a little bit because you just don't need to shift colors as much. And I'm much more likely to use a closer to straight out of camera file out of this than I am from a lot of other manufacturers. That being said, those files are enormous. They are over 200 megabytes per photo. So if you are shooting 4 to 5 photos on this camera, that is going to be around a gigabyte. Fear not though, because inside this camera, you have a built-in 1 terabyte SSD. And you also have the ability to use CF Express Type B cards, like these ones I hear of here from Lexar. It's one of the things that that's like the first time I've taken this card out of this camera in like the month and a half or so that I've had this camera. Speaking of super fast performance, is one thing that it's just a trade-off for having this system and having a camera this small. It is the fact that this camera does not have a shutter in it at all. All of these lenses are what's called leaf shutter lenses, and so there's actually a shutter in the lens itself. That means that if you want to adapt lenses or use anything else on this or use it in electronic shutter mode, you do have to just use it in electronic shutter mode. And the readout speed of a sensor like this is not going to be that fast. But it's one of those things where you have to know how and which situations will work for it. So I can do like still life and I can do portraits and things like that and have absolutely done that on this camera and the X2D2 and the 907X. But it's one of those things that like I can't do it while I'm walking backwards and a client is walking towards me. I'm just going to get some of the warping if I am using electronic shutter. One of the little hacks I have though is to switch the camera from 16-bit mode to 14-bit mode. That allows the sensor to read out a little bit faster and you're going to get less of that. So I just have like a custom setup in a user profile in these cameras that switches it over to electronic shutter mode and switches it to 14-bit mode. But it is something that if you are buying this to adapt other lenses to it, just know that you are going to end up facing some limitations. And one of the things that I didn't mention when I was talking about the leaf shutters is the huge advantage of just being able to flash sync at literally any flash speeds. With a normal shutter, you're getting a flash sync speed of like usually under 1/250th of a second. A lot of them are 1/180th. This just frees me up so much easier. It's a reason why I've kept my A9 III around, because of that global shutter and the ability to flash sync at any speeds. This does the same thing. So it's one of the things that, like, if you aren't someone that has a Sony A9 III around, you're able to pull this thing out and be able to get incredible files and flash sync at any shutter speed, which just makes that whole process really, really useful. Another thing that's really great about this camera, and I've seen people, you know, do like handheld stuff for 4 seconds or whatever, but there's a lot of times where I'm at a wedding and I don't often bring tripods, but the ability to use the incredible IBIS of this camera is just absolutely phenomenal. So I can pull this up, combine the crazy amount of IBIS in this camera with the fact that we have leaf shutters in the lenses, and I can handheld photos, you know, like up to a second easy, which is just another thing that helps my workflow. Obviously, if you're doing dedicated time lapses and things like that, you're going to want to get a tripod. But for the fact that I can do a lot of still stuff in lower light, because of that, without needing one in a pinch, it's just another one of those like really, really helpful tools that this camera provides. That being said, the thing that I am most excited about, and the thing that for me has made this the camera that I've been waiting over a decade for from Hasselblad, is the new autofocus system. Now, in the previous models, they did do firmware updates to add face detection modes, which will, if it sees a face, it will move to that point and make your autofocus point be that. But on a camera like the X2D and a camera like the 907X, this only means that you are able to use that as just like a moving the focus point for you, basically. It will move the focus point around the frame, and then it will stay on single point autofocus. But there were times with the X2D too, where I had clients walking towards me and I was trying to get good focus with them, and it just wasn't able to do that. It was tracking their face as far as like the autofocus tracking thing goes, but it does not have any continuous focus. Now, the thing that this camera does have though is continuous autofocus. It has face and eye detect, and it has a LiDAR focusing little window here that is supposed to also help in even lower light situations. And the thing about this is it is the game changer for me. My main things always are like, am I able to photograph formal dances with this and still get the movement of all that stuff happening? And am I able to get people walking towards me as I'm either stationary or as I'm walking with them? While I haven't done a formal dance at a wedding with this thing, I have photographed my kids running around and fighting each other, and it's pretty much done a really, really good job with that. So it's going to be a more difficult scenario than a wedding would be in that regard. It just nailed focus perfectly well. It's one of the things that the previous Hasselblad cameras have not been able to do, which has been the thing that has deterred me from making them a larger part of my wedding photography workflow. So the autofocus is absolutely fantastic on this thing. It's not, again, going to be as fast as like a sports camera, but for what this camera is, and for I think the vast majority of people, they're going to be using this. It tracks really, really well. It tracks objects and birds and animals and automobiles and things like that. And I found it to be by far the biggest improvement and the biggest thing I was looking for in this system, and was, I wouldn't say like disappointed by the previous models, but it was one of the things that, again, kept it from being a larger part of my workflow. Now I think this will be a much larger part of my wedding photography and just photography kit in general. It's been a dream to be able to use all these Hasselblad cameras, and it's something that I know is going to stick with me quite a bit because of its added performance. It's, again, the thing about the autofocus is just a massive, massive, massive thing for me, as I felt like that was still the one thing that the X2D was lacking. But if you are a person that does a lot of still life, a lot of landscapes, a lot of architecture, things like that, the X2D is a fantastic camera. I'm not saying you should upgrade from that at all, because dealing with the files on that camera is just amazing. Same thing with this one. But the fact that the autofocus just has taken that immense leap to be kind of in the same realm as like a modern phase detect mirrorless camera, it's the thing that is going to make me use this significantly more in the future. So thanks so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions about this camera in the comments down below. You can check out my video comparing the 907X and the X2D up here. Let me know if you want me to do a comparison between the new X2D2 and the 907X now this is out. Check out my video on the 907X up here, and I will see you in one of those.